Okay, it's about 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started with the webinar. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, To Cloud or Not to Cloud, It's Your Business Decision, presented by Curtis McAllister. I'm your host, Stacy Dreher, and I'm the firm marketing manager for James Moore & Company. So over the next hour, we're going to be helping you guys determine if the cloud is right for your organization by addressing IT strategies to consider. We're going to be talking about the benefits of the cloud. We'll be giving some case examples as well as talking about cloud considerations. But before we get started with the presentation, there's a few items that I'd like to address. You know, we really encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, but do keep in mind that we'll be addressing them at the end, and we'll try to get through as many of them as possible. If your question does go unanswered, we'll be sure to follow up with you either with a phone call or an email. Also, if you encounter technical difficulties during the presentation, please call that 888 number listed on your screen and request webinar support. And lastly, for those of you looking for CPE credit, we'll be sending you an email within the next several days that includes copies of the slides, a copy of the recording of today's webinar, and also instructions on how to obtain CPE credit. And now for some information regarding your presenter. So meet Curtis McAllister. Curtis has about 25 years experience in the technology industry. You know, and interestingly enough, he previously worked for the military, where he was responsible for maintaining and supporting active operations. And this foundation of experience really allowed him to develop his current service philosophy, that of when approaching any problem, first identify the impact to the business's operations, plan and execute the resolution as a team, and then identify how to prevent it from reoccurring. And as the technology solutions manager for James Moore & Company, Curtis provides IT consulting, project planning and implementation, and service delivery to all of our clients throughout Florida. He manages a large team of technology professionals across our 3 offices located in Tallahassee, Gainesville, and Daytona Beach. And you know, I just want to say that we're really excited to have Curtis presenting today. Not only does he bring a unique insight into the technology industry, but he also has an energy and enthusiasm that I think is really rare within the industry. So without further ado, Curtis, I'm turning the mic over to you to get started with the presentation.
Thank you, Stacy. Good afternoon. We appreciate the time you've taken out of your day to join us. I'm Curtis McAllister. I'm the Manager of Technology Solutions for James Moore & Company. And I'd like to spend just a few minutes to share with you some ideas about how your organization may be able to improve its efficiencies and reduce its expenses with the help of cloud solutions. Most people are not aware that James Moore has had a cloud solutions offering for more than 20 years. I've been with James Moore nearly 15 of those. In that time, I have seen a lot of change. Computers have gotten more powerful but smaller. Software has gotten more functional, more robust, more user-friendly. And as technology continues to be a significant cost for most organizations. So before we get started, what is cloud computing, or the cloud as it's commonly called? The cloud is the strategy of deploying groups of remote servers and software that allow centralized data storage and online access to computer, services, or resources. The cloud focuses on maximizing the effectiveness of shared resources. There are generally 3 kinds of cloud that we talk about. The private cloud, which is designed for and used by a single organization. In some instances, your local network resources could be referred to as a private cloud, as long as those resources are kept within the boundaries of your firewall. Usually, all the communication to and from your private cloud are over dedicated or private circuits. We, James Moore, utilize a private cloud for some of our technology as we offsite some resources to a co-location facility connected with dedicated transport circuits that no one but us can see or use. The public cloud, this is a cloud which the network resources are delivered over a public medium such as the internet. In the public cloud, your data is still secure. Communications to and from the public cloud are often encrypted, but the fact is you are still communicating over the internet. Lastly, we have the hybrid cloud. The hybrid cloud is exactly what it sounds like. It's a combination of both the private cloud and the public cloud. This is the approach James Moore has taken in that we have some of our resources on site in our building. We have some of our resources in a co-location facility. And we have other resources that we use strictly from the public cloud. So a common question is, where is the cloud? Well, it can be anywhere. Usually, when we're talking about the cloud, we are referring to the public cloud. And that is literally everywhere. It's distributed, it's spread out to maintain levels of redundancy and reliability. So another question is, if it's everywhere, how do you access it? That often depends on the solution at hand. Some cloud solutions you access directly like you would on the corporate network. Others you use remote desktop technology to access. And others are providing the resources directly over the internet through a web browser. It all depends on the solution. The best part is anything is possible. Recently, for example, we helped a client relocate their corporate infrastructure to a public cloud, the Microsoft Azure cloud to be specific. We'll talk about Microsoft Azure in a few minutes. We provided them with multiple ways to access their cloud resources. We set up a virtual private network, VPN, between their corporate office and the Azure cloud so they could work like they normally would. We configured remote desktop services on the Azure cloud so that when their users were out of the office, they could still securely access the cloud resources. And they had some resources that were accessed directly via the web browser, such as your email and other portions of their data. As you can tell, the best part is you're not limited to just one option. Organization leaders have always searched for ways to get more value from the resources they have. With the increased availability of high-speed internet, reliable internet, major software developers have made it possible for everyone to access robust enterprise-class technology for reasonable costs through cloud solutions. Let me ask a quick polling question. Do you use cloud solutions in your organization today? I'll give you a few moments to answer. Okay, it looks like the majority of people do in fact already use cloud solutions. For the small percentage that does not, you might actually be using cloud solutions and not even realize it. For example, a number of organizations use Dropbox. Dropbox is a cloud solution that's used in the business environment. Another common cloud solution is Gmail. Both those products were initially developed for the consumer market, but have been adapted for business use. You know, they were brought in to fill a need. So, as we talk about cloud solutions, a common misconception is it's an all-in or all-nothing approach. I'm here to reassure you that you have options. That's not the case. You can move your common organization tools to the cloud, email and messaging, communication and collaboration tools, for example. And you can leave your other more unique line of business resources on site in your office. That's what we refer to as the hybrid approach. Taking a hybrid approach may be the best way for you to improve your efficiencies and reduce your costs while getting a start in the cloud. Now, before we jump deep into the cloud, we need to speak about a few things to help optimize your cloud experience. Some fundamental strategies to promote a positive cloud experience, if you will. Let's start by discussing new users' workstations. Conventional thinking would have an organization go find a computer from Best Buy, Sam's, Walmart, wherever, without much regard to the user's job function. A better approach, as we have found, is to define the job function of a user and then identify the technology to complement that job. A good example is myself. Historically, I have used a desktop computer. Also used a laptop computer and a tablet. Depending on the work I had scheduled for that day and where I was working would dictate which of those 3 devices I would use and sometimes which 2 of those devices I would use. After analyzing my work process, it was determined the best solution for me was to migrate to a business class tablet. I chose a Microsoft Surface Pro 3 as it gave me the power of the desktop with the portability of the laptop while providing the convenience of pen and paper. Since the Surface Pro 3 has pen support and on-screen writing, which I prefer to use during meetings as it does not distract from other attendees as typing often does. Another benefit of this tablet is it is running Windows 8.1 Professional, which ties directly into the James Moore corporate infrastructure, allowing me to run all the applications that the rest of the organization uses in addition to my own applications. Now, truth be told, this tablet does cost more than any of the other 3 devices, but it is significantly less expensive than all 3 combined, which is what I had. Also, with only 1 device to manage and maintain, the internal IT staff could spend their time on more important activities. In addition, there's less software to purchase, less software to inventory, and make sure it's updated. So as you can see, moving from 3 devices to 1 yields efficiencies for me, and it actually reduces the expenses for the organization. Let's take a quick poll. Do you use a tablet in your organization today? Okay, so some of you actually do currently use a tablet. Of those that are using a tablet today, what kind of tablet are you using? iPad tablet, Google based tablet, or Microsoft Windows based tablet, such as myself? Okay, the results don't surprise me. The majority of users are in fact using an iPad tablet. Fewer users using Google, and a decent number is actually using a Microsoft-based tablet. It's good to realize that while Microsoft-based tablet was the best fit for me, non-Microsoft-based tablets can serve a role in your organization, as many of you are using and finding out. No, in fact, the reality is one of our senior engineers uses a Google-based tablet for note-taking and research while he's in the field. The best part of the options are countless. So, I mentioned management and maintenance a moment ago when referring to my tablet and my previous computers. If we want to have the best experience and maintain high levels of efficiency, you cannot neglect your technology. We have to do standard maintenance at the most basic level to ensure a stable foundation. At a minimum, you need to make sure that your operating systems are patched with the latest updates. Patches are used to fix problems and add features that may not have originally been there. There are also security patches that need to be installed to keep the system protected and reduce vulnerabilities to your organization. Basic maintenance steps such as cleaning off temporary files which build up over time and defragmenting your hard drives are things that you can do to promote a healthy operating environment and maintain efficiencies. On a side note, you do not want to actually defragment a solid-state hard drive, which is commonly found in tablets like what I'm carrying and what many of you are carrying, or even the smaller or ultrabook laptops. Defragmenting a solid-state hard drive will actually cause them to wear out faster. So, a few other pieces of software that we need to consider making sure is on every machine. Antivirus and anti-malware. This software should be installed and configured to automatically update, no less than daily. They should also be configured to automatically scan the computer on a regular basis, no less than weekly. Failing to follow those just two basic rules can open your organization up to vulnerabilities that are best left out of your network. Okay, let's talk about some of the collaboration tools that are very powerful and readily available in the cloud. To preface this, I'm going to talk to you about several Microsoft products. While there are other products available to use in the cloud, we, James Moore, have chosen the Microsoft Office 365 and Azure solutions. Therefore, I'm naturally more familiar with those. But as I speak, you'll probably draw some comparisons to Google Docs and a few others. A quick question. Who has heard of or are using Microsoft Office 365? Okay, it actually looks like almost half of the attendees have at least heard of Microsoft Office 365. That's great. For those of you that haven't or are not sure, Microsoft Office 365 is a cloud-based solution to provide enterprise-class messaging and collaboration tools hosted and supported by Microsoft. For a monthly subscription fee per user, you have access to all the features of Microsoft Exchange, Microsoft SharePoint, and Microsoft Link. We'll talk about more of those in just a minute. Microsoft Azure is a cloud solution that gives you more flexibility than just the standard components of Office 365. With Microsoft Azure, you can run a complete environment with your own line of business software on Microsoft's cloud. Azure provides technologies such as SQL Server and Windows Server 2012 as core resources that you can build upon. So, let's start off by talking about SharePoint. SharePoint is a tool which has been around for years. But a lot of people don't know about it. It's a pretty good secret of Microsoft's. It was released in 2001 as a tool to help organizations manage and distribute their information. It's often deployed as an intranet site. It can be used to store documents, and SharePoint brings some powerful capabilities within reach of every organization. For example, SharePoint is capable of keeping track of different document versions created by different users. It can be used for digital record management and meets government and industry compliance standards. SharePoint also provides the benefit of a central location for storing and collaborating on documents. Microsoft Link is another tool that James Moore uses to enhance our collaboration. Link is instant messaging for the organization, for the business. It allows not only mobile users and remote offices to communicate real time back to the main office, but it also allows the people in the same office to communicate quickly and easily on items that may not be worthy of an email. Now, while text is great for quick questions and answers, if you need to escalate the conversation, you can click a button and start a voice call. If you really need to collaborate with someone or in a group of people, you can click a button and start a video conference. In that video conference, you not only get to see the person you're talking to, but you can share your desktop, showing them what you're working on and allowing you to collaborate in real time. Now this is great, but what makes Link really powerful is a feature called user presence. That feature lets you know or helps you identify when a coworker is available and able to work, or when they're busy or away. Displaying the presence of your coworkers can help facilitate finding a resource when you need one. Also, for compliance-sensitive organizations, the messages that you send via Link can be stored in your Microsoft Outlook for data retention requirements. Another key thing to note, the presence indicator carries over in your Microsoft SharePoint web page as well. When you're looking at documents that somebody else has edited, there's an indicator that tells you whether they are online or not, so you can use that as an indicator and even to start a conversation if you need to discuss something. Now, we spoke about Microsoft Outlook a second ago. Outlook's a tool which is commonly used for email, but not often recognized as a collaboration resource. For example, when you take and tie in Microsoft Outlook to a Microsoft Exchange server, like you would do in an Office 365 solution, you pick up the ability to take advantage of a feature called resource mailboxes. A resource mailbox is simply a mailbox in Exchange that is created to represent an organization's physical space or physical hardware. For example, you could create a resource mailbox for your conference room. You would also create a resource mailbox for your projector and maybe a laptop to use in the conference room. Now that's fine. How do you use it? Here's where it really becomes powerful for you. Let's say, for example, you need to schedule a meeting with Bob and Sally. You need to use a conference room, you need to use a projector. So you ideally want to schedule this meeting for 10 a.m. If all those resources are available at 10 a.m., then it's fine. Then everything's fine. You schedule a meeting as you normally would. But if any of the resources are not available, to include the projector, the conference room, or the laptop, Outlook will tell you in real time that there's a conflict, and it will go further. It will offer you suggestions on when all the resources that you've added to your calendar appointment are in fact available, and it'll let you choose from those options. It helps you facilitate scheduling that meeting in a very efficient manner. So, a lot of great solutions, a lot of powerful technology at play here that I just spoke about. The other side of the coin is implementing those solutions on site is fairly expensive. You're not looking at just the cost of the software, but also the hardware cost, software licensing fees, and even the technical expertise to design, install, configure, and maintain that software. You're usually looking at 5 digits. For example, James Moore implemented the predecessor to Microsoft Lync. When we did it, it was done on-site. It required 3 physical servers and a significant amount of man-hours to install, configure, and just monthly maintenance. And after 3 to 4 years, it would be scheduled for upgrading and refreshing. Now, today we can take the same technologies, Microsoft Lync, implement it for a few dollars per user per month on the cloud, very quickly, very reasonably priced. And again, that's a subscription where you pay per user per month. Now let's talk about some of the benefits of the cloud. We've already touched on the decreased costs by requiring less hardware and less software. We also touched on less maintenance. In just a moment, we'll go into more detail on how the cloud can improve your business continuity and reduce your downtime, how it's scalable, and how it provides all organizations access to enterprise-class technologies. So, I mentioned scalability. Great benefit of cloud solutions is it allows you to true up or true down your licenses as you need to. What this means is if you're an organization which requires more resources during certain times of the year, James Moore, for example, has a higher need of resources during tax season, then you can, if you have these technologies on site, each user will need to be licensed on their own. You have to purchase and pay for it in advance. And when you don't need those resources any longer, you still have to have the licenses that you've already paid for. In contrast, with a cloud subscription, you need to, you can hire additional resources. You would increase your subscription count as you need them. And when the increased need is over and you no longer need those resources, you can reduce your subscription count. Therefore, you're only paying for what you need when you need it. Also accessing enterprise technologies like Link, Exchange, and SharePoint, they're affordable as a cloud subscription, even for the smallest organizations. You do not have to have experienced, trained technicians to implement and maintain those solutions in the cloud. Microsoft is maintaining those solutions for you. Cloud providers like Microsoft do have redundant internet connections. They have to. They have backup electricity. They replicate their data across multiple data centers over large regions to protect their services from outages. Microsoft, for example, has 5 data centers spread across the United States for their Office 365. If you happen to be an organization which has an international presence, you can have that increase to overseas co-location facilities of data centers as well. When you have cloud solutions, you can maintain less hardware and software on site. That's less that you have to purchase, less that you have to maintain, inventory, and renew. And an often overlooked benefit is that's less that you have to feed with electricity and cooling. So when you look at the total cost of ownership, you are decreasing your cost with cloud solutions. You can also improve your cash flow as you're not making large hardware and software purchases anymore. You're paying monthly subscription fees, which are consistent and predictable. Now, there are some things to consider as you're making the decision to move to the cloud. Internet performance is probably the biggest. Do you have high-speed internet, and is it reliable? Because it's not just enough to have a really fat pipe. It has to be stable and always be there for you. How do you access your data today? Are you using a line of business software which stores its data in a database, and you have to use that application to access it? Or is your data simply stored on a file server down the hall on another office where you just open the files up directly? Line of business applications often require a client interface, and they're not always cloud-friendly. For example, we recently helped a client move all of their data to the cloud. They happened to use a line of business application which had a client interface and spoke directly back to a database server. The client was run on the workstation back at the corporate office. The server was in the cloud. And while they had a really fast internet application, the application itself did not lend itself well to operating in that fashion. In the end, we were able to solve the problem by restructuring how the users ran the client application. And today, the solution is working well for them using a remote desktop solution to talk to that specific application. But that's an example of where everything can be good, but the application that you're working with. Other things to consider when you're thinking about moving to the cloud. You do have to rethink what normal is. For example, if you were to email a coworker in your office or a large file, they would receive it almost instantly when you have an on-site email server. That same email sent to me, being outside your organization, could take 5 minutes. You would not give that a second thought. That's normal. When you move your email to the cloud, the experience would be the same emailing both of us, internal or external. It would take the same 5 minutes. Sometimes that's hard to get used to when you're used to having that instant response to the person next to you. Another thing to realize is when you move to the cloud, you lose the ability to put your hands on your data. Today, with an on-site server, you can walk down the hall and wrap your arms around your file server and say, hey, this data is mine, here it is, I have it. In the cloud, you don't really have that ability. Again, your data is replicated over multiple data centers, spread out across geographic areas. Remember, that's a good thing. We want that. That provides protection and redundancy to your environment. That helps promote business continuity. But there's no place that you can go to and put your hands on it and say, okay, I now have it. I spoke about high-speed internet. You may be in a position where you don't have it today. The good news is providers are building out all the time, and what you can't get today, you will probably be able to get to tomorrow. Other things to consider, as we're talking about internet, with your resources being in the cloud, internet becomes more important to you. A good investment is to get a backup internet line with some of the money that you're saving by not buying hardware and software. So you always have a connection to your data. Even if it's a slower connection, that's fine. It lets you keep your business flowing. And remember, we don't have to move everything to the cloud. Hybrid solutions are probably the best way to go for most organizations. Moving your email, your messaging and collaboration resources to the cloud, that's easy. Let Microsoft manage and take care of those. Your line of business applications, your proprietary or unique applications, keep those on site until the developer that you work with is ready to support the cloud, and then look at moving. I mentioned a second ago, cloud service providers, they do have redundant systems in place. They do provide levels of maintenance that you don't have to. And the fact is, they are secure and reliable. They have to be. That's what their business is about. They have those capabilities built in and designed in from the ground up, so you can trust them. So, in the end, how do you decide if the cloud is right for you? Basically, you have to look at your business processes. You have to look at your line of business software. Is it compatible with the cloud? Does your vendor support it? Well, how do you know? We need to contact the software developers and ask them. The good news is, if a software developer has taken the time to get certified under Microsoft Windows Server 2012, they are automatically certified by Microsoft to run on the Azure cloud. That's a first step to get their software there. If you're an organization which has business continuity requirements and needs high levels of uptime, then the cloud is certainly right for you. It's hard to achieve the same level of uptime and redundancy with an on-site solution as you can with a cloud solution, simply because it's extremely expensive to get redundant power, redundant internet, redundant hardware, redundant software in an on-site solution. Another point to consider is organizations have great IT staff. They spend their time taking care of the users and the line of business applications. More often than not, however, they don't have the training or the expertise on the more common software, such as your email server. That's the reason to move the email server to the cloud. Get it out of your network on site. Move it to the cloud. Let your IT people focus on your line of business software and focus on your user needs. Let Microsoft worry about making sure the email server is running as it should. They have teams of engineers that do nothing but monitor their Office 365 and Microsoft Azure solutions day and night. Maybe some physical restraints keeping you from moving to the cloud. Again, I go back to the internet speed and reliability. That's important. If you don't have it today, though, you can postpone your cloud migration, but it's coming. Everybody will have it at some point. On the other hand, if you have compliance requirements that require you to maintain and keep large amounts of data for extended periods of time, the cloud's hard to beat. It's often less expensive and easier to manage and maintain your storage requirements in the cloud than it is on site. Because remember, when you have a server on site, you need to plan for its life cycle every 3 to 5 years. That server has to be replaced. That storage has to be upgraded. What else do you need to think about when you want to make the decision? It really comes down to how you want to do business. Today, you have a number of choices. Tomorrow, some of those choices may go away. Not all of them. But James Moore, for example, uses software today that we can only use in the cloud environment. There is no option to bring it on site. More providers are moving in that direction because it's cost effective for them, and in reality, it's more cost effective for their clients. Helps distribute that load and spread the costs over a number of different organizations. So I'd like to summarize. We've spoken about a few things. Moving to the cloud in whole or in part is an organization's decision, which eventually will have to be made. It's a decision that will come up again and again as software developers continue to enhance their software and cloud providers continue to enhance their platforms. There are already some software developers who only write software for the cloud. With today's technology, the ability to create a hybrid cloud solution for your organization is available, and it can help you improve your efficiencies and reduce your costs by streamlining your operations and providing better technology to your users in the process. In addition, it allows your IT staff to focus on the organization's critical softwares and critical solutions and not be taken away to maintain or repair a more common technology, again, such as your messaging or communication systems. Cloud providers have made it easy to get into the cloud without a lot of upfront costs or significant time investments from their organization. James Moore has helped a number of clients move to the cloud. We're happy to help you get started in the cloud as well, help you test the waters, if you will, and we can help you decide if the cloud is right for your organization. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me this afternoon. I do believe we have time for a few questions, Stacy.
Yes, thank you, Curtis, for that presentation. I certainly think that you've given us all a lot to think about. And we do have some time for questions, and quite a few have come through during the presentation. So let me grab a couple, Curtis, for you to answer. The first one being, how long is my email retained?
In general, email on Microsoft Office 365 is retained indefinitely. Microsoft gives you a data limit of 50 gig per user, which is cumulative for each organization, and they have no requirements for you to retire that data or remove that data. Now, as an organization, you may have data retention regulations or guidelines that you have to follow, and Microsoft can support those as well and can help you set up automatic retention periods where data does get deleted on a predefined schedule or get removed on a predefined schedule, or even just archived off to a separate storage pool, at your retention points. But we can talk about that more one-on-one if need be.
Okay, great. Thanks, Curtis. And let me scroll through here and give you a couple more questions. How secure is the cloud? For example, what type of security features are usually used, and how robust are they against hackers?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to speak specifically to Microsoft solutions. Wow. Microsoft uses standard encryption techniques. They use SSL certificates for the web interface. They use 256-bit encryption. Also, as we're setting up connections from local organizations to the Azure cloud, we tend to control the VPN tunnels that are made in those. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft does actually have teams of security professionals that monitor their firewalls and monitor their network for attacks, intrusions, signs of not only rogue software but just malicious activity 24/7. That's a common practice of theirs. If you'd like to have some more specific information on that, please reach out to me. I can send you links to Microsoft's website, which goes into detail on their security measures and their compliance standards.
Great. Thanks, Curtis. Can you recommend an electronic document storage solution?
Oh, goodness. Probably not in this conversation. The requirements for electronic document storage will really vary on what your needs are. At a most fundamental level, Microsoft SharePoint was designed for that purpose. And depending on how in-depth you want to get, it can be a very robust product for you. Now, there are a number of canned products as well, but that's something we should probably discuss offline as the conversation can get fairly detailed.
Great. Thanks, Curtis. And here's another question. Who is responsible for the security patches for the cloud?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Let's talk about two different scenarios. The Microsoft Office 365 solution, Microsoft is handling the patches and the updates and the maintenance on that infrastructure. and that would include the general patches for the SharePoint interface as well as Link and Exchange. On the Azure infrastructure, Microsoft covers the patches and the maintenance on the core infrastructure, essentially the hypervisor level, and the client is expected to maintain their servers on that infrastructure. So, for example, if you set up a line of business software on the Azure platform and a domain controller, so you have 2 servers running on Azure, while Microsoft is protecting the hypervisor, you would still need to patch, update, and maintain your domain controller and your line of business software. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, great. We have a couple more coming through. What do we do if we need to recover data that is stored in the cloud?
A couple different ways. And again, I'm going to separate these off a little bit. On the Microsoft Office 365 solution, if we need to recover data, a mailbox or an email or something, we open up a support ticket with Microsoft, give them the guidelines of what we're looking for, and they facilitate that recovery process. On the Azure side, what James Moore does when we spool up an Azure network is we can handle the backups 2 ways, and we let the client decide how we want to handle this. In one scenario for a client, what we did is we enabled data replication from the Azure cloud back to the on-premise location as their backup, if you will. They could use it live. We also maintain backup solutions there. So that's one way we can do it. The other way we can do it, there's actually a couple other ways we can do it. Another way we can do it is we can spool up dedicated backup storage on the Azure cloud and use built-in Microsoft technologies like Windows Server Backup to back up the corporate data on Azure to another disk pool on Azure as a backup. A third way we can do it is, since Azure is so versatile, we can implement any number of third-party backup solutions to back up our Azure servers, our servers hosted on Azure, to a third party. One that most people probably familiar with, we can install, for example, CrashPlan on an Azure server and have CrashPlan back up the Azure server to the CrashPlan cloud. And again, I'm using CrashPlan as a common utility that I hope many people in this conversation have at least heard of. And again, if that doesn't answer the question, please reach out to me directly, and I can elaborate.
Okay, I'm just scrolling through here, Curtis. We have a couple more. Is there a cost based upon mailbox storage size for Office 365?
If you want to exceed, if you have a need to exceed the 50 gig per user cumulative, there is a cost. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what that cost is. I've not run into any organization which has exceeded the data threshold Microsoft is giving, because quite frankly, it's very large. As we're talking about 50 gig per user, if you have 5 users, then that's 250 gig of email size for your entire organization. So we've just not had the need to run into that, so I don't know the price off the top of my head, but it is available. You can purchase more.
Okay, great. A couple more questions here. Is there anything I need to do to prepare for a transition to the cloud?
A number of things. And most of them is something we should discuss, one-on-one. But in general, look at your software that you use. Look at your business processes. Identify the job functions of your departments and your staff, and start thinking about how the workflow would be affected or could potentially be affected. Also, cleaning up old data, cleaning up rogue data that's out there. Some of you may have email that's 12, 14, 15 years old. Some of you may need it. My guess is most of you don't. Start cleaning that up and start organizing that. Same thing with your file data. If you want to move to the cloud, since the cloud is a subscription service, Azure specifically is a subscription service where you pay for drive space. It's only cents on the gigabit, but you still pay for the space. It's best to have your data clean and organized before we move it up. That tends to yield the best long-term results. after it is up and running versus moving it and then cleaning it up afterwards. Doing it backwards like that will cost you more money and more frustration as we have to redesign the data anyhow. Again, another question that would be great to talk to one-on-one so we can go over some very specifics about your specific organization. What else?
Okay, and Curtis, are most of these cloud platforms HIPAA compliant?
Many of them are. Now, some of them honestly are not. And what we normally recommend, especially for medical institutions, this is an example where the hybrid comes in. On the Office 365 side, yeah, great protections there. But we would keep your line of business software, your ERMs and software and such, we would keep that on site with you so that you have direct control over the compliance standards and what plays into that directly. Perfect example of a hybrid situation.
Okay, thanks, Curtis. And how does James Moore work collaboratively with other LEA firms for either internal services or services to clients?
We take those on a case-by-case basis. What we normally do is when we need to interact with another provider, I generally sit down with the other provider and we have the conversation about what's expected, what service, what the scope of work is, and who is doing what in that scope of work. But again, that's something that's really best addressed one-on-one. It's too hard to address in such a generic forum, I'm afraid.
Okay, and what about can I be billed annually?
Yes. Microsoft does have options where you can be billed on an annual basis. Their normal method for billing is monthly and very often straight to a credit card. But if you want annual billing, you can get that. Now, annual billing does impact how you can true up and true down your licenses. You can still do it, but it's a little bit more of a process to do it than when you're being billed monthly. But not unreasonably so.
Okay, and can you share documents with external users?
You can. I assume you're referring to through SharePoint itself. SharePoint has a number of technologies that will allow you to email links out or provide access to individual documents to external users. It's still in a very secure fashion, secured manner. So you're not putting all your information out there for public viewing, so to speak. But you do have those capabilities.
Okay, and we had a question come through regarding the use of a tablet.
Okay.
So are there any limitations to the tablet?
I've owned a couple of tablets, and frankly, every tablet I've owned has its limitations. There are definitely trade-offs. The Microsoft Surface Pro 3 that I'm currently carrying, the biggest limitation that I've personally run into is it will only support 2 monitors with its native connections. And most people probably don't know me. I ran 6 when I had a desktop. Now I'm down to 2 monitors plus the tablet screen. Now I can get USB devices and such, but natively it only supports 2. Most tablets, I'm talking about Windows-based tablets, most tablets do have limited hard drive space. So you have to be careful what you store on them. Some tablets, such as your iPad and your Google tablets, they're great for note-taking, they're great for internet searching and such, but you can't do a lot of business functions on them. For example, as I compare the iPad to my Surface tablet, I can join my Surface tablet to my domain here at James Moore, and I've done that so that when I'm working on the tablet, it's just like I was working on my desktop. I don't have that ability with the iPad. It's just a different type of device. Whether it impacts you or not really comes down to what role does that tablet need to play in your work process. If it's just for taking notes at meetings, that may be all you need. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, great. And another question that came through, how do you know which files to eliminate when you do the temporary file cleaning?
There are some standard locations that the Microsoft Windows stores the temporary files in. Think of it like scratch pad locations. We know what those locations are, so we clean the files from there. If we need to get more in depth, that's generally because there's a bigger problem that just maintenance alone won't solve. But for normal maintenance, there are a number of standard locations.
Great, thanks Curtis. So I know a number of you have addressed some questions that we haven't answered, and some of these are just a little too complicated to talk about during the webinar. So what we're going to do for those of you who haven't received a response yet is just follow up with you with a phone call or via email to provide some additional information. So with that information, if you're still unsure about whether the cloud is right for your organization, or if you do have some general questions regarding your IT options and what would work best for you, we really highly encourage you to reach out to Curtis. I know that he would be more than happy to analyze your current IT processes and make some suggestions. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. I want to thank you all for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful day.